another episode of Workforce Ready with NStar. My name is Nnamdi Ihenacho, and I am going to be your host today. As always, I'm excited to get into today's topic. Today, we'll be talking about, just job titles explained, what companies call database administrators or DBAs today. I want to get into that. So this is, if you're looking to break into database administration, you've been applying to DBA jobs, but you've not had any luck because you're wondering, you're not getting the feedback you want, or I get those questions from time to time where folks come in and like, hey, I've been applying and it's not happening, or there's not enough jobs out there and all of that. That's actually wrong. It's just I want to make sure you're looking in the right places and looking at the right things. And so that is my mission today, is to get into that. What is it called now? How has the role evolved over time? And that way where to, build on what areas of expertise if you're going to, to level up, so that you can be in tune and you're not missing out on opportunities that are out there that you actually qualified for. Right. So the classic DBA role is changing, right? It's evolving, and I would say it's evolving more than it's changing. So what's the standard, what the classic DBA role used to represent was installation, it's maintenance, it's broken, identify, resolve, it's break fix, like production support. That was our thing. Patching and updates, all of that, backups, performance tuning, disaster recovery, high availability, and those things are still a core part. You cannot be a database administrator if you are not doing these things that I talked about, right? It is, but it's certain things because of advancements in technology and the rise of technologies like cloud platforms, cloud technologies. There is some evolution going on. So the rise of the cloud infrastructure, for example, is leading to changes to the standard DBA role. DevOps as a culture, the DevOps culture is also affecting, what the expectations are when it comes to what the role of the DBA is. And now there's a lot of blending, role blending going on. So you're not necessarily just in one lane, right? There's that blend of, data plus engineering plus security. And it's this mix, right? And this rich tapestry when it comes to what the role looks like. And of course, we know AI and automation and how that's affecting everything else. And so the database administrator role is not left out, right? In fact, some people don't even use that title anymore. Right? So they are looking for database administrators, but they're not using the DBA title anymore, because now that role, the expansion of that role, we're seeing that evolution happen in real time in our very before, right? It's happening in real time, and we can see that happening. So what are some of the new and emerging job titles that still mean DBA? What are they calling us now? Right. So there's still the traditional titles like the database administrator. So you will still see a deluge of roles that fall into that category, the database administrator role. SQL Server DBA, Oracle DBA, MySQL DBA, Postgres DBA. You still see those traditional titles. Are still a lot of them out there. There's still if you go on LinkedIn, do a search, go on Google, do a search, go on Indeed, Dice, anywhere you find your jobs, you will see a barrage of standard traditional DBA roles. So that those are still accessible to us. We still have access to these opportunities, which is a good thing, right? But where I'm trying to drive to is the evolution of the role is a good thing for us, because we can, with a little bit of upskilling, expand the scope of opportunities available to us, right? So the traditional database administrator role is still alive and well, right? So what are some of the new variations, right, in modern times in 2025? What are some 2025 variations of the database administrator role? So one title I want to highlight, one is the data platform engineer. You will see that a lot. Again, these are more platform specific database administrators. Okay, so as a DBA, you're already an engineer. People don't really think about it like that. But as a database administrator doing any level of support or design, you're already in that engineering role. So people are afraid to call themselves engineers, but you are. Okay, so the data platform engineer is a title you should explore. One thing you have to pay attention to is those job descriptions. Make sure it's within the scope of the things that you are expecting. But data platform engineer is a role that you, as a skilled DBA or somebody who is maybe looking for their next opportunity, looking to go up to the next level. That's a title you need to look at. The next role that is popping up now that is still an evolution of the DBA role is the database reliability engineer. So you see there's a lot of this reliability engineer roles out there, whether it's the SREs, RTEs. Now, the database reliability engineer is another one, still just like the data platform engineer. The database reliability engineer is pretty much somebody making sure the databases are reliable. What does that sound like? I think that's a DBA. So if you see that title, go ahead and apply, right? If you're wondering, is this a good fit for me? Is this something I should go for? Go ahead and apply. Just again, the one thing I needed to pay attention to with these roles is the job description, the platforms, right? The core database platforms that they are supporting. If that's something that's aligned with your skill sets, go ahead and apply. Don't worry about the title. Go ahead and apply. I promise you're qualified for it. The next one is the cloud data administrator. The cloud data administrator, or the cloud database administrator, however you want to call it, is also another new title popping up. It's a DBA who supports infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, which again is when I want to talk about this, myth of the cloud. People think of the cloud as this fancy, even with all of the, even with as common as the cloud and, using the cloud has become, it's almost like people adopted AI faster than they than how they've accepted the concept of cloud and cloud architecture infrastructure. When we talk about the cloud, it is just organizations renting data centers from these larger scale organizations and hosting their servers on there. So instead of me building out a physical data center, or infrastructure server in my own building, right, which is going to be utility costs, maintenance, staffing, all of that, organizations will opt to. Initially, you can just go to there's like some of this QTS, for example, here in Suwani. People can go rent data center spaces and host their data centers in places like that. Or there's other ones as well. I think it is SunGuard. There's organizations like that that have the physical infrastructure and people go host their data centers there, right? With physical infrastructure. And then it moves to virtualization where we could use virtual machines like VMware, Hyper-V, and host a bunch of servers without having to have that physical infrastructure. And then it evolved to the cloud. And with the cloud, it's going back to that. We are renting data center space from Microsoft. So Microsoft created this massive, and I'm going to say simplify it to, they created this massive data center called Azure, right? Where they have a collection of servers and resources, and then they built a level of elasticity into it to ensure that people can build their servers and grow their resources on the fly, right? Amazon has its own, data center, and it's called AWS, right? Amazon Web Services. And so since I do not want to, I want the flexibility of building out servers when I need, as maybe a startup company, or maybe just a company that's just trying to be efficient and effective with space. Or maybe I'm trying to get away from that physical data center situation. I can say, hey, Amazon, I'm going to move all of my database infrastructure to your data center, to AWS, right? And so as a cloud database administrator, what it means is I have a level of knowledge, right? And you're not trying to be a cloud architect. You're not trying to be any of that. It's good to know. The more you know, the better for you, but it's not a deal breaker, right? But you need to be proficient to understand how it works. Again, so where I was going with all of that gist is the cloud just works exactly like, for the most part, it's your server, but it's the same way a physical server behaves, but now you are doing it on another person's platforms. So there's certain protocols and operational, uniquenesses, right, with these platforms that we need to be familiar with, some nuances that we need to understand. But once you get past those initial nuances, it's the same as managing a database like you would physically do it in a physical or an on-prem server, right? So that's your cloud database administrator. And then the next one, the next title, the next variation of the database administrator role is the infrastructure engineer with database focus, right? So there are infrastructure engineers with but focused on the database side. Again, we are infrastructure folks eventually. All right, that's why we always work with the server engineers, with the infrastructure guys. We always work with the storage engineers, or those. We always working with them, the backup people. It's like we lockstep with these guys all the time. And so some organizations will have infrastructure engineers, that's storage, infrastructure engineer servers, infrastructure engineer network, infrastructure engineers database, right? So that's kind of something to pay attention to. If it's an infrastructure engineer but database focused, then that's a DBA. That's a DBA, maxed DBA. It's a DBA wearing a different jersey. All right. And then next one is I think I talked about this a little bit, the site reliability engineer. Just like the database reliability engineer, it's a site reliability engineer, but this is with emphasis on the database, right? It's database emphasis or database focus. Again, that's just another variation of the database administrator role. The next title that we need to be familiar with is the DevOps engineer. If you look at that, just make sure that it has that database management responsibilities, right? But DevOps engineer, it's one title I've actually held in an organization I worked for. It's DevOps, but yes, a lot of that database concentration. So definitely read the job descriptions to see whether there's that alignment. And if you seems like they're looking for somebody with expertise on a particular database platform, but it's the title is DevOps engineer, maybe it's just about their processes. The processes is more they're DevOps heavy, but they need a database administrator who is aligned, who is aligned with that, who's familiar with that protocol. And then the next title will be the data operations engineer. So you see a lot of engineer pop-ups here because again, as a database administrator, you are an engineer. So the data operations engineer is just I feel like this is a fancy way of saying production support, production support DBA. So data operations engineer is also a fancy way of saying database administrator. It's a 2025 way of saying database administrator. So these are some of the variations, the more modern variations of the database administrator role, but in the end, it's the same. So as you're doing your job search, these are some of the titles to consider. If you're at that, initial, you're trying to get in that initial level, then you want to pay attention to, again, there's not a lot of junior database administrator roles out there, but you can look out for those. Junior DBA is not entry level DBA, right? Entry level DBA, don't look for that. It doesn't exist. There's a database administrator is an advanced role. It's an advanced technical skill. So that is not something that you get into at entry level. You have to have a level of expertise in infrastructure and database platforms before you can become a database administrator. You might see junior database administrator roles, but don't look for entry level roles. If you see an entry level role, they just don't want to pay you. So wanted to emphasize that. And so junior DBA roles or people who are looking for those foot in the door opportunities, we have data analyst, role. Yeah, you can look for data analysts, but make sure you're paying attention to, are they looking for, people doing SQL admin responsibilities? And then there's IT support specialists as well that have that concentration on SQL, or any data platform. So those are some other foot in the door type roles out there. So if you go on LinkedIn, you can see some of this. I would highly recommend go check out some of these titles on LinkedIn. Again, I'll go through some of the roles again. Data platform engineer, data reliability engineer, the cloud database administrator, infrastructure engineer with database focus, site reliability engineer with database emphasis, DevOps engineer, that's also having database management responsibilities, the data operations engineer, and at the foot in the door level, I have junior database administrator, data analyst, that's with SQL DBA or SQL admin duties, IT support specialist. One thing I want to emphasize here is, again, as you explore these roles or these titles, pay attention to the job description. That is really what will be your calling card for whether to move forward or not to, right? To move or not to move is going to be determined by the job description, right? That's okay. Is this what exactly are they looking for? What exactly is the job description of the day to day? That is really what you want to pay attention to. Again, a lot of these things are database administrator roles just maxed with just how with a fancy with a new jersey, and so sometimes you might need to pay attention. These will now let you see what you have, and maybe you need to just take a quick course on LinkedIn Learning or Udemy, right, to cover up any gaps and then go for it, right? There might be roles that you already have 80%, and okay, I need to just upskill here. I need to just maybe do some take a course here and there to build my expertise and then jump into, be able to apply for these roles. So it's a good thing to explore all of this and see if there are gaps, and then you build on that. Right. So, but in terms of what exactly companies are looking for, we talked about the variations of the role. What skills are they really looking for? So the first one I have is your SQL and TSQL for Microsoft folks, right? SQL as a platform, T-SQL as a scripting language. And the next skill you need to have again is backup and recovery. Again, these are all very standard DBA skills that you need to be familiar with. The next one I want to talk about is performance tuning. So making adjustments to your transactional processes to make them perform better, to increase speed of outcomes, speed to results. That's performance tuning. And of course, familiarity with some monitoring tools, whether it's, Dynatrace or Redgate, SolarWinds, Idera, SQL Sentry, Sentry One now, all of that. So just familiarity with some of these tools is always, a good, nice to have. Some cloud experience is always good to have. Just I would always recommend anybody who's exploring a new career, especially in tech now, do get some familiarity with Azure or AWS. Those are the key players. There's Google Cloud, but it's not playing in the realm as these guys. And then automation, especially with PowerShell, is something that will definitely be a boost on your resume, building proficiency there. And I think right now with Copilot and all of these tools, those are good assistants to help with your PowerShell. So I'll say go get the fundamentals, understand the basics, the foundations of this, and leverage AI as a partner when it comes to writing your scripts and your code and analyzing and doing things. Eventually you get a level of proficiency with these tools, but these are skills that organizations are looking for. And then the ability to collaboration with dev teams, with your server and infrastructure teams, all of that ability to work across teams is always a strength. That you're always going to be able to leverage. Right? So if you look at this, you'll see again, if you're familiar with the DBA role, you'll see that a lot of this are consistent with what we already do. The skills are the same. And even if the title is different, it is the same set of skills required. Right. So except maybe you might need to upskill on the cloud. I would say cloud is really the one thing you need. I would throw in other data analysis platforms, reporting platforms, say like a Snowflake, for example, for dealing with big data. That's something that you can go learn if you are looking to, especially, on the engineering side, reporting, you're breaking in, exploring all of that. It gives you a more wholesome level of expertise to be able to do more. In the end, the game is the game. It's still the same. It hasn't changed. The titles sound fancier, but it's the same game. Same game, same beast. I remember Kobe 24. Like, it's same animal but different beast. Like, what does that mean? All right, if you've seen that commercial, it's always funny thing about RIP Kobe Bryant. Yeah, same beast, same animal, but are you the same beast? Okay, let me continue. All right, so how do you search for those roles? Search by skill, right? So don't, instead of just looking for job titles, search based on skills. So SQL, TSQL, database, do that, search based on the skill and not just job titles, and see what comes up and then start filtering down. Search based on, SQL Server, database administrator, so stuff like that as well. Maybe combine them together, SQL Server or database administrator, and or Azure or cloud. Like those, play with that, do those Boolean job searches in job boards, can get to SQL Server or database administrator and then throw that in the search engine, Azure or cloud. You just play with it and see what comes up, and then you can start exploring what's based on the results, right? And a few other tips, as I start wrapping this video up, you can still use like your database administration, in your keywords, in your LinkedIn profile. Have database administration, SQL. Have those, make sure those are reflected in your LinkedIn profile as keywords, so that for SEO and all the other, key skills, AWS, cloud, Azure, let those be in your keywords on LinkedIn. And then apply broadly. Apply broadly. Don't let titles restrict how wide you go. Apply to everything. Again, if there's apply, in the end, you want to have a conversation. Okay, so if it looks like there might be some, even if it's like 50% alignments, apply. Have a conversation. See where it goes. Because a lot of the time, job descriptions are bogus. right? Job descriptions might be hastily thrown together. And so it might not, a lot of the time, and if you've done this for a while, everybody in the game knows job description and actual work, they're never the same thing, right? The job description, the job titles, you see job descriptions and it's pages upon pages. And you wonder, okay, are they expecting me to do all of this? And then you get on the job and you're like, okay, why do you have all of that? So it's best to apply, have a conversation, and then that will give you exposure to the core requirements for that job. Okay, when you have a conversation with a recruiter, when you have a conversation with a hiring manager, it shows you exactly what they are looking for, what the company is looking for with this particular position, and helps you be better equipped, better prepared, and then you know whether this is a good fit or not. Like, don't disqualify yourself until you apply. Let them say no to you. Don't say no to yourself, right? I always tell my students that don't disqualify yourself. Let them put that onus on them to say, well, unfortunately we can't move forward. We have other candidates that better align, but don't disalign yourself. You never know. Have a conversation, right? Apply broadly. Again, don't be tied to. Don't let the job titles or all of that stop you. If the job description looks like it makes some sense, apply. Focus on what you bring to the table, right? Focus on you. Focus on your skills. Focus on what you are, your abilities, your expertise, your experience. Okay, so when I talk about job readiness, like practice, focus on building your expertise. Focus on expanding your toolbox in terms of what you are able to do and speak to, right? Focus on building your pool of real world scenarios. People always wonder, okay, how do I get real world scenarios to describe? Real world is you can make your own real world, build out your own lab, right? And practice and break these things. In practicing, you are building your muscles, you are testing out various case studies. During your interviews, those things you did in the lab become things you talk about, right? Again, most interviews you say, hey, this happens. Has there been a time where you've done this? They're not asking where you did it. They're not asking to tell them whether you did it in your own virtual lab at home on your computer. Have you done this before? How did you resolve it? How did you handle it? And then you talk about it, right? You can. That's how you build your pool of your resource pool. And I'm giving you insider scope now, things that I teach my students. But it's how you build your expertise, your pool of people wonder, like, how do I real world? That's real world. That's how you build real life experience. Again, you're not just about the title, it's about your career. All right, it's about the career. So that's all I have. Please, if you want to learn more about how we can help you get started in the career in database administration, do book a call. The link should be in the description when you watch this. We'd love to have a conversation with you, or just send an email to us, info@NStar Technologies, and somebody will respond and follow up. We do have different ways that we can support you, help you get started or get into this career path. Whether you want, like, however your learning style is, we have something for you. But let's have a call, let's have a conversation. This is not a pitch, a sales call. I want to make sure you're getting value out of this. But if you do want to learn more about what we're doing, then let's have a conversation. Well, that's all I have. Again, thank you for listening. I hope you've gained something from this. Please let me know in the chat if you have any questions or if there's something that resonated with you and you want to give more, explore more.